Man, you know that moment when you feel something shift in the air, but nobody is saying what's really going on? That's exactly where professional golf sits right now, right in the middle of something huge. And at the center of it all, Rory McIlroy. Something just happened that changed everything. Rory's team made a move that sent the PGA Tour CEO scrambling into full damage control mode. And I'm not talking about a heated argument or a tense phone call. I'm talking about a calculated, deliberate action that exposed the biggest weakness in the entire tour structure. Brian Rolapp didn't see this coming. Nobody did. But before I tell you what Rory's team actually did, you need to understand why they had to do it. Because this story goes way deeper than a single headline. This is about control, it's about power, and it's about a CEO who thought he could reshape the tour without anyone pushing back. Here's the thing that makes this crazy. Rory didn't attack Rolapp directly. He didn't file a lawsuit. He didn't threaten to leave the tour. What he did was smarter, more strategic, and way more dangerous for Rolapp's authority. So what exactly happened? And more importantly, how did Rory's team force the most powerful man in golf into a corner? That answer is coming. But first, you need to see the battlefield they were fighting on. To understand why Rory's team took this step, you have to understand who they were up against. Brian Rolapp took over as PGA Tour CEO in the middle of 2025. He came from the NFL, where he spent over 20 years building media deals and turning Sunday football into a year-round media machine. He knows how to build billion-dollar deals. He knows how to control narratives. And he knows how to get what he wants. When Rolapp arrived, the tour was still recovering from the LIV golf disruption. Sponsors were nervous. TV ratings were inconsistent. Players were demanding more money and more control. It was a mess, and Rolapp was brought in to fix it. He didn't waste any time. Within months, he rolled out a plan that would reshape the entire tour calendar starting in 2028. 2 distinct tiers. The Championship Series would be the premium events with limited fields, massive purses, and all the best players. The Challenger Series would be everything else. Smaller fields, smaller purses, fewer perks, less exposure. On paper, it sounded like progress. More concentrated star power on TV, better ratings, bigger sponsorship dollars. But underneath that shiny surface, there was a problem. The Challenger Series had a catch. Entry would be strictly limited. Only the top players from the previous season would get full access. Everyone else would have to fight for scraps through qualifiers and sponsor exemptions. And that meant traditional tournaments, events that had been on the schedule for decades, would suddenly become second-class citizens. Think about what that means. The RBC Canadian Open, a tournament that has been played since 1904. The Phoenix Open, one of the most raucous events on the calendar. The Colonial, a course that demands precision and shot-making, not just power. All of them potentially pushed into the second tier. Most players kept their mouths shut. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? But Rory isn't most players. He had been watching Rolapp's moves with a growing sense of unease. He saw where this was heading, and he wasn't going to stay quiet forever. That quiet unease was about to become something far more dangerous. The first crack appeared in the fall of 2025. Rory was doing an interview in Europe, and he made a simple statement. He said, and I quote, "I want to play golf when I want to play golf." At the time, it seemed harmless. A star player expressing his independence. Just a casual comment. But the golf media knew better. One veteran journalist, Eamon Lynch, immediately called it exactly what it was. A warning shot. And he said, if you're Brian Rolapp, you hear that, and you know Rory is drawing a line in the sand. Rory had already been pushing the limits of the tour's minimum event requirement. He played exactly the minimum in 2025, and he made it clear he wasn't happy about being forced into a box. He didn't want to play events just to check a box. He wanted to play events that mattered to him, and he wanted the freedom to choose his own schedule. That was the first crack in the relationship. But the real explosion was still months away. By the time the 2026 season rolled around, Rolapp's 2-tier plan was becoming more real. Players were starting to understand exactly what it meant for their careers. And Rory, who had always been one of the most vocal defenders of the tour's traditional events, decided he wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. The breaking point came in June, just before the US Open. Rory was asked about Rolapp's plan during a press conference, and instead of giving a diplomatic answer, he dropped a bomb. He said the Challenger Series, the second tier, was nothing more than a glorified Korn Ferry Tour event. Now, for those who don't know, the Korn Ferry Tour is the PGA Tour's development league. It's where young players grind to earn their cards. It's where careers are made, but it's not where major champions belong. It's not a place for Ryder Cup heroes. So when Rory compared Rolapp's big new plan to that, he wasn't just criticizing, he was publicly humiliating the CEO in front of the entire golf world. He even used a specific example. The RBC Canadian Open, a tournament he had won twice, would be pushed into this second tier. Rory said that was wrong. He said that event deserved better. He said it had history and tradition that couldn't be bought with TV money. And the implication was crystal clear. Rolapp's entire vision was a step backward for the game. That comment sent shockwaves through the golf world. Not because it was unfair, but because it was true. Everyone knew the second tier would be a downgrade. Everyone knew traditional events would suffer, but nobody had the guts to say it out loud. Rory did. And then he went even further. That public takedown was brutal. But what happened next turned a war of words into something far more personal. Rolapp couldn't let that slide. He was the CEO. He had to protect his plan, his reputation, his authority. So just days after Rory's comments, Rolapp called a press conference at the Travelers Championship, and he fired back. He said he had spoken with Rory directly. He said they had a conversation about the issue, and then he proceeded to dismantle Rory's argument piece by piece. He insisted the Challenger Series would be nothing like the Korn Ferry Tour. He promised the events would be played on familiar courses, with big purses, and that players would actually want to be there. He even implied Rory was exaggerating the negative impact. But here's the thing. Rolapp's response didn't calm the waters. It made things worse. Because now it wasn't just a disagreement about policy, it was personal. Two powerful men, both too proud to back down, trading blows in public. The CEO versus the biggest star. No filter, no behind-closed-doors diplomacy. And the golf world was watching. Every fan, every player, every insider picked a side. Some said Rory was right to defend the old-school events and stand up for tradition. Others said Rolapp was just trying to modernize the tour, and Rory should get with the program. But everyone agreed on one thing. This feud was not going to end quietly. Something had to give. Rory had already won the war of words, but he wasn't finished. He had one more move, and it would make everything before it look like a friendly debate. That move came next, and it changed absolutely everything. That move came in the form of his 2026 schedule. Rory announced he would only play 14 PGA Tour events this year. 14. The minimum requirement is 15. If you don't play 15, you face a one-year suspension. That's the rule. It's black and white. It's been on the books for years. But Rory didn't apologize. He didn't ask for permission. He simply said he had told the tour about this back at the end of 2025. He said, "You knew, so don't act surprised." And with that, he put the ball squarely in Rolapp's court. Now, if this had been any other player, the tour would have dropped the hammer immediately. Suspension, fine, public reprimand, make an example out of them. But this wasn't any other player. This was Rory McIlroy, the face of the PGA Tour, the guy who sells tickets, drives ratings, and puts eyeballs on the screen. The guy sponsors build their campaigns around. So what did Rolapp do? He pulled out the extenuating circumstances clause, a loophole buried deep in the rulebook, a special exemption that would let Rory off the hook without any penalty. He framed it as a reasonable accommodation for a player with a busy schedule, but everyone knew what it really was, and that's when the fans erupted. Social media went absolutely insane. One account, Tracking Scheffler, posted that the jokes actually write themselves. Another popular golf show said Rory would fail to meet the minimum, but apparently would not be penalized. One journalist called it clearly special treatment, and they were right. It was special treatment. The tour was bending its own rules to protect its biggest star, and everyone could see it. But here's the part that nobody expected. Rory didn't ask for that exemption. He didn't want it. In fact, he was publicly angry that the tour was giving him a pass, because it made him look like a hypocrite. He wanted to prove that the rule was broken. Instead, the tour proved that the rules only apply to certain people, and that hypocrisy, that unfairness, is what finally pushed Rory over the edge. That special treatment was the final insult, and what happened next forced Rolapp into damage control. Here's the part you've been waiting for. What did Rory's team actually do, and how did it force Rolapp into damage control? It wasn't a cease and desist. It wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't even a public statement. It was something more subtle and far more damaging to Rolapp's authority. Rory's team used his schedule as a weapon. They forced the tour to publicly admit that its rules are flexible when it comes to superstars. By announcing he would only play 14 events, Rory put Rolapp in an impossible position. If Rolapp punished Rory, he would lose his biggest star. If he didn't punish Rory, he would lose all credibility with every other player on tour. Either way, Rolapp's authority would be damaged. There was no winning move, and Rolapp chose the path that did the least immediate damage. He activated the exemption clause. He publicly stated that Rory's reduced schedule was acceptable. He tried to frame it as a reasonable decision based on extenuating circumstances, but the damage was already done. The cat was out of the bag. The damage control started immediately. Rolapp had to go on the offensive. He had to explain why the rules didn't apply to Rory. He had to reassure other players that they wouldn't get the same treatment. He had to convince sponsors that everything was fine and the tour was still a fair playing field. He had to do all of this while looking like he was still in control. But nothing he said worked, because the message was already clear. The tour has one set of rules for its stars and another set for everyone else. And the more Rolapp tried to explain it away, the worse it looked. Rory's team didn't need lawyers. They didn't need a legal threat. They just needed Rory to do what everyone knew he was going to do: play fewer events and let the tour dig its own grave. Now you know what triggered the damage control. But the real question is, what happens next? The fallout from this is massive. First, every player on tour is now watching. They saw Rory break the rules and get a pass. They saw Rolapp scramble to cover it up. And they're asking themselves, why can't I do the same? If Rory can play 14 events and get away with it, why can't I? Second, the tour's credibility is shot. If the rules don't apply to everyone, they're not rules. They're suggestions. And suggestions can be ignored. The entire structure of the tour is built on the idea that everyone plays by the same rules. That idea is now dead. Third, the fans are furious. And they're not going to forget this. Every time the tour talks about fairness or integrity, fans will remember the 14 events. They'll remember the exemption. They'll remember that Rory got special treatment while others got penalized for the same infraction. And fourth, Rolapp is in survival mode. Every decision he makes from now on will be questioned. Every rule he enforces will be compared to this moment. His authority is damaged, maybe permanently. He went from being the new CEO with a bold vision to the guy who couldn't control his biggest star. So here's the thing. Rory's team didn't need to sue. They didn't need to threaten. They just needed to expose the truth. And the truth is that the PGA Tour is not a level playing field. It's a system that protects its stars at all costs. The damage control is just the beginning. And the next move will define the future of the tour. Now, I want to hear from you. Here's my question. Do you think Rory was right to force this issue by breaking the rules? Or did he abuse his power? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one, and this debate is only getting started. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is built for fans who want the real conversation, not the corporate spin. We're growing fast, and I want you to be part of it. But before we wrap up, let's look at the bigger picture. Because this isn't just about Rory and Rolapp. This is about the soul of the game, traditional tournaments, historic events, the fans who have supported them for decades. All of it is at risk. If the tour keeps bending its rules for stars and prioritizing signature events, what happens to the rest of the schedule? What happens to the players who can't afford to take a stand? What happens to the tournaments that built this sport? Rory's move forced the tour to show its hand, and now everyone can see exactly what's in it. The tour will protect its stars. The tour will bend its rules. The tour will do whatever it takes to keep the money flowing. But there's a cost, and that cost is credibility, trust, fairness. Rolapp is in damage control mode right now. He's trying to fix the damage Rory's team caused. But some damage can't be fixed. Some wounds don't heal. The tour's credibility has been cracked. And once that happens, it's hard to repair. The question is, will the tour learn from this? Or will it double down on its mistakes? Will Rolapp adjust course? Or will he dig in deeper? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. Rory McIlroy just changed the game. Not with his swing, not with a victory, with a decision that exposed the tour for what it really is. And no amount of damage control will erase that. This story is far from over. In fact, it's only just heating up. And the next few weeks will tell us everything about the future of professional golf. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. If you made it this far, you're a true fan, and that's exactly who I'm talking to. So don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's keep having these honest conversations, because this is the kind of golf talk that actually matters. See you in the next one.